Matt Roberts is one of Britain's best-known and highly regarded fitness experts, the ultimate personal trainer to entertainment stars, former prime ministers and sports people. In 2019, Matt founded Evolution, focused on optimising health span and longevity. There's nothing that this man doesn't know about how to live fitter, stronger and longer lives.
But I love the fact we can actually find ways to really just drive ourselves to a different level. How fast can we go? How far can we jump? How long can we run? For all of it, I found the data behind it wild and still do to this day.
We talk a lot about what's required physically to keep yourself healthy and well. But how much of it's up here?
It's not a case of I've got to make time. This is now just what I do. I think there's an assumption that we need to get 8 to 9 hours a night. Reality is we don't. It's really about quality. I do think if we can survive the next decade, then we will have extremely healthy, long lives. And we will be active in our 90s and 100s.
Matt, if you're selling personal training, I'm buying it, because looking at you today, and for those that are listening on audio as opposed to watching on YouTube, I mean, you look the picture of health. How old are you these days? Is that a rude question to ask?
I hesitate. No, never. I hesitate to say I'm 51 years old.
Wow.
I had this whole thing, right? When I was turning 30, and stupidly, when you're 29, you think turning 30 is like old. I thought, I'm getting at this point now, just make sure I was staying on top of things. I had a real deal with myself to say, I've got to, when I turn 30, be the same in all my metrics, nerdy, as I was 20. I had all my metrics in terms of the body fat data and my weight and all sorts of other things alongside it as well. And got to 30 years old, fine, that's easy, right? Because you're 30 years old. When I turned 30, I thought, well, actually, I can do this and do the same thing at 40. It'll be the same shape at 40 as at 30, and therefore 20. Go forwards then 10 years, get to be 40, and the same metrics, same data and everything, worked like crazy. And I thought, well, yeah, clearly, you've got to make sure at 50, you've got the same numbers at 50 as at 40, at 30, and therefore 20. And I'm right there. So, but it takes work. I mean, I can't deny it takes a whole load of input and work. And there's definitely a case of you have to really kind of adapt and tweak and change what you do as you age. But I really don't believe that aging is a necessity to a point. I think we have to take the viewpoint that, yes, we age in the numbers, but genuinely, honestly, we can really hold back the physiological aging quite significantly. And that's really, I'm my own best, worst guinea pig in making sure I do the things I need to do and recognize when I know things change. You can feel that things could be changing, and they've got to tweak to make sure you adapt the training and adapt the diet, focus on some sleep patterns and so on. And life gets in the way as well. As life stuff goes on at the same time, all that's happening too. So you're trying to make sure you've got this maintenance of yourself alongside dealing with all that life throws at you. So there's lots of ways in which I go about that, stay mentally clear and strong and on it. And it's by no means perfect, but it's okay. It's all right.
See, I thought you were going to say, so you turn 30 and you think you can still stay in shape like you were when you were 20, and then you turn 40 and then that's a lot harder. And you're like, no, I'm still on that program. I'm still keeping to that program, which is kind of remarkable. Is it a truth? Is it a truism that from sort of the age of 27, everything starts to go south in every which way that you can possibly imagine? Is that when you have to sort of be on it from?
You've got to be on it from about 20 years old. I mean, honestly, there isn't actually a point at which you'd say, I'm fine. Because even when you think you are fine, probably in your 20s, all the things you need to do start at that point. So what's a good example, actually? Do you know what? Your bone density. Let's take that as one really weird, obscure example. Peak bone density, the strongest your bones will ever be, is about 22, 23 years old, somewhere there. So work you put in when you're 16, 17, 18, go through those years that builds up the density, and your diet being in check then gives you a much greater chance, especially as a female, later on when bone density drops through menopause, holding on to that bone density, you've got a higher peak for then that curve to drop off. So honestly, things actually start from really early on. You're forming your neuron response, all the neurons in your brain and your muscles, all that response, all that neural pathway work is done when you're in your teens and 20s and beyond at its best. When we're pumping out hormones like crazy in our teens and 20s, that's when we can maximize on creating muscular utilization and creating that nervous response. So you can argue that all the work should never stop. It's always all the way through. Now, to your point, depressingly for a male, the testosterone starts to drop at around 30 to 35 years old. We know females hit a bit of a slump from between 40 to 55, and somewhere in that zone. There's perimenopause and menopause. So there's things that happen that definitely cause a problem, and it definitely makes us have to really reassess how we work ourselves. So you've got to look at yourself then and think what's going on. But that means you're having an ongoing strategy. And it's not so much, I'll do a bit now to try and make sure I'm okay. It's just life is about being tested. Physically, we have to test ourselves. We have to push ourselves to make sure we are forcing the body to constantly adapt. I say that because, we forget, we get to the age of, 35 and 40 and 45 and 50. You forget the things you used to do when you're in your 20s and your teens. You forget the movements you could do at that point in time. I used to be a sprinter as an athlete. I spent hours doing training drills, sprinting drills, running drills. My old training partner was Darren Campbell, great athlete.
Lovely
Darren.
guy, yeah.
And so we trained hard for many years together, Darren and I, and he's a great guy. So we spent many an hour doing endless, repetitive, seemingly boring drills. And, I sort of, even for me, I sort of half forgot I did those things. And about 3-4 years ago, went back to do them. And every time I go on a track again, by the way, I feel slightly physically sick. So it has that kind of memory going on of just incredibly hard training and intensities. And so going back, there's always a bit weird. But doing the drills again, I thought, wow, even I train really hard, but these drills now feel like they're weird. I've got to mobilize in a different way again, strengthen a different way again. So we sort of forget what we should be doing, how bodies are supposed to move. So it's about an ongoing process of staying on top of every facet of your health all of the time. So with that in mind, when you do hit 30, fine, you can get away with a bit, but actually stay on it. When you're 40 to 50, you're probably in the dark decade where things maybe change.
I feel
quicker.
it. I feel like I'm in that decade. Well, I am. I'm right slap bang in the middle of that decade, and I absolutely feel it. And I am looking for solutions all over the place to try and, halt the slide of decline without putting too much of a negative spin on it.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. So the things we need to do, if you look at what needs to be done for a body, if we start with the really good raw basics for us to all feel healthy, every cell has a mitochondria or many mitochondria, and they're a bit like the battery of the cell. They just define how you use and what you use as energy, whether it's glycogen, sugar, whether it's fatty acids. And it's important to maintain mitochondrial health to make sure the cells function phenomenally efficiently. If you've got that going on, then we're in good shape. As you get older, they get less efficient. So making sure that's working well is crucial. Now, to get those to work well, the key basic thing, and you've probably heard the term quite a lot recently, it's in the press a lot, is zone 2 cardio. The zone 2 cardio training is the cardio which is not the go and smash it with a HIIT session. It's the cardio which is go and sit on the bike for 45 minutes and tick over at about, roughly 125 beats a minute if you're around 40, 45 years old, somewhere there, and just watch a TV show and just be, just do the thing. 3-4 days a week doing that. That on an ongoing basis creates strong mitochondrial health. Your body adapts to knowing it can efficiently burn away fatty acids rather than just having to reach for sugar. And we gradually over time, our body morphs into getting a bit more sugar hungry. That's why we get pre-diabetic later, or we get diabetes later. So we've got to make sure we're maintaining the right control with that. So that's a definite go-to that everyone must do to feel energized and well. We've got to get or be strong. I mean, strength training, I would say, is probably the number one thing we need to be doing. Because frankly, unless the muscles are really strong and functioning well, I don't mean big at all, I just mean strong, then we cannot get the bones to be strong, we cannot get the hormones to get a response, we cannot even assume we can get good mobility back without having good strength alongside it. So the strength training is critical. And I think that for most females, that's been historically maybe a weaker area. It's not been a kind of an area that's been a draw for people going to the gym and do strength work. But it's increasingly happening where people are shifting to that as females, which is great. And I think it's important to really focus on not just the aesthetic. It's very much about, are you physically strong? Can you lift up a big weight? Can you actually shift a big weight? Things like deadlifting in the gym is a classic example of being a thing which is not the most fun exercise to do, but it integrates all the key muscles of your pull chain, the glutes, the back, hamstrings. And they're the ones that give you great posture, and they actually give you a greater response to human growth hormone than anything else. So you choose your weapons with strength work, but it's important that's in there. And then probably finally amongst the mix of the crucials is mobility. We do get stiffer unless we actually keep on moving. So doing mobility drills every day, there's a whole host of things you can do with that. It's too long to explain in a podcast. But we have to do that as a regular thing. I think it should be every day. It takes 10 minutes. It takes no time at all. But without that, gradually you get a little stiffer, you get a little more tired, you get a little more achy, and then suddenly 10 years down the line, you realize you can't move as you did, and you won't get that back easily. So we have to just really focus on which things are vital. So for you and your mission to stay healthy and young and well, those are the things to go for. And I think that chief amongst those, strength, but we wouldn't discount at all the zone 2 cardio as being fundamental in everyone's workouts.
And also, I guess, just prioritizing it, right? Because I think it's the first thing that drops off most people's lists when they're super busy and got a million and one other things to concentrate on, whether it be children and school and all the things that brings, or work, or just various other pressures that come with modern life and modern living. The first thing that seems to go is, oh, I'll just skip the gym today, or you sort of make an excuse not to go. So, I mean, is there anything that you can do for yourself, which I mean, everyone always says to me, put it in as a meeting, put it in as a diarized meeting so that you can't wriggle out of it. You can't talk your way out of it. I mean, is that also a thing that we need to start doing, is reprioritizing?
Yeah, I'm not going to kid you that, when I go into work, I'm rebounding into the gym every time. I'm not. I mean, it's just a case of sometimes you've got to force your ass off the chair and go and do it because there's no choice. And frankly, the problem is if we don't do the workload, the workouts, then we can't perform it other ways in our life. We just know that's a fact. So I think remembering the idea of this is not a case of I've got to make time. This is now just what I do. Because if I don't do this, everything else gets significantly harder. If you've got children and they're running around like crazy and you have to have the energy for that, you have more energy if you make a bit of time to do the thing. So yeah, it does mean refocusing all the time on remembering how good you feel when you are healthy and how good you feel when you are fit. Because it does feel better. But I guess a bit like childbirth, so we forget some of these things. This thankfully is a good forget. We get some upside back by working out. But it's important to keep that in mind all the time because, we know we feel energized. We know we can move better. We know our mood is better. And we need to have a huge release of not just the hormones of testosterone and cortisol. We need to have other kind of happy, feel-good hormones. We need to get some dopamine release. We've got to make sure we feel really well, and that's critical to make time for. It does mean making time. So, you're right. It does mean that it's allocating a chunk of your day. And it's not just making 20 minutes. I'm always amazed by journalists I get asked questions from of, what can I do at my office desk to work out? Well, nothing. There's nothing you can do there. You have to actually make some actual time. What are you going to do? Make your fingers stronger by have a pen wiggle around? It has to be time. It takes, probably on average an hour a day of focused time in some form or other. And then you make some changes, some differences. But it does mean prioritizing it. It does mean actually being slightly selfish. So if you have got the ability to make time, then you have to be selfish and say, I need this for me. If you've got kids, it's tricky, I know. But it does mean then, where possible, integrating them into something that you're doing. So when they're there driving you nuts, lie down, try and grab some time to do some core work maybe, or do something else that you can do while they're playing with some toys or watching some TV or whatever you might be doing. Just go find the time there, but don't let yourself off the hook for sure.
Yeah, when you look at people like Helen Glover, who manages to bench press her 3 children and at the same time go to yet another Olympic Games this summer, you think, oh my goodness, I am lacking. There is definitely room for improvement. In terms of exercise, let's just break it down to the real basics. Is there a particular time of day that works better than any other time in terms of what it can give you, not necessarily because it's convenient for you?
So if you're looking at the perspective of trying to maybe lose some calories, lose some weight, then theoretically doing the cardio stuff in the morning gives you a higher peak metabolism at a longer point when you're awake in the day, so then keep on burning at a higher level. But it's actually quite marginal. It's not a huge difference. Even if you work out later in the evening, you still burn at a high rate overnight. But the caveat would be, do you sleep well after you do it late at night? In doing strength work, there's almost no differential. It's tiny. Each person's slightly different as well. So honestly, the answer is not enough to be concerned about planning your day around that aspect. It's more, when can you make the time to do the thing? If you know that you're not a morning person, if you know you're just really kind of, sleepy in the morning, don't get going, then don't do it in the morning. Do it if you can in the afternoon and evening. So it's very much horses for courses. Likewise with the evening stuff with can you sleep after doing hard cardio, everyone's so different. I mean, people play intensive sports in the evening, go home, crash out, sleep for 9 hours. So it's really varied. So you've got to play with that yourself. Like with all these things, everyone has a hugely different response. And the sleep's a key thing, actually. It's a thing to kind of dive into a bit, because the sleep factor, I think we need to understand just how much sleep is really needed. And I think there's an assumption that we need to get 8 to 9 hours a night. Reality is we don't. So people shouldn't feel too pressurized to get these enormously long sleeps. It's really about quality. And you feel like Matthew Walker, of course, of endlessly spoke about this stuff, and he's really good at this key subject. But I use a Whoop device on my wrist to track my sleep data. And what's important to look at is the ratio of your time when you're sleeping compared to time spent in deep sleep and in REM sleep. And if you've got a high quality, you can have as little as 6.5 hours and still be okay and rested and recovered. So we've got to have that, though. If you're having less than around 5.5 hours per night, and lots of people really do, then as a guy, your chance of building testosterone levels back up again are really, really slim. So you've got to make sure we're getting that time where we can get replenished. And also our cortisol, our stress hormone that we rely on. So when you wake in the morning, you feel a bit generally bleh. It can be because you've got lower cortisol, and we need the stress hormone to try and wake up and get going and feel good. And if we haven't got that there, we reach for more things to give us a bit of a lift, like coffee and sugar. So having enough sleep in that last third of your sleep, that last 2-3 hours, and you regenerate the cortisol levels at their most, their peak. So getting a long enough spell of sleeping is really critical, which means then backtracking to what are you doing before you go to bed. And if you use this at all, but actually you can play with cold showers. I don't think the words well.
Play with cold showers go together.
You in.
That does not sound terribly joyful, Matt. I've got to tell you, it's like the word play and cold showers. Yeah.
I'm going to give you a challenge. I need to try this out. So we need to just try and do the cold shower challenge. You should start. So you have to go beyond the pain phase. So the pain phase is that first bit, of course. The first minute is when you gasp for breath and you feel like you can't stay in there. After a minute and a half, it's just water. You're just cold anyway. So after that time is when you actually get the biggest benefit.
Well, how long do you have to last?
2, 3, 4, 5 minutes.
What, 5 minutes?
Well, it looks like females are different to males. So females run at a different heat level by about 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees. So for a female, probably around 2.5 to 3.5 minutes would be really great. For a male, you can go for 5-6 minutes. So it's more like kind of gritting it out. But the benefits are really high. So it's used really successfully with people on drug addictions, giving this dopamine release. It replicates part of that, gives you a good settling out factor. But the important thing with the sleep in mind is that if you play with this and if you try to if you're struggling to go to sleep, then you want to try and make sure that you're heating up before going to bed. If your problem is staying asleep and waking up too early, you need to make sure you're cooling down before you go to bed to then allow your temperature to rise after. So whenever you get cold, if you have a cold shower, your core temperature will go down. As you then come out of the cold shower, gradually it goes back be above the level it started. So you get this kind of bounce back in heat levels. And it's that gives people, when they are in bed, post-cold shower, cool the core temperature down, they're then lying down, falling asleep, they're gradually rising back up. They get that warm feeling, which keeps you asleep for longer. So if you're struggling to stay asleep, then a cold shower before bed is definitely worth having a play with. If you're struggling to get to sleep, a warm shower is better before trying to go to sleep. So play with those things for sure as well. Lots of good benefits along the side.
Wow, that's really interesting. I might actually just give that a go, having sort of, poo-pooed it before you actually explained it. I think I might actually give that a whirl and see what emerges. The interesting thing regarding sleep, and it is fascinating, certainly from I come at it a little bit, not myself, but via my husband, from the athlete perspective, is the cellular recovery piece. If you don't give yourself the time required to allow your body to rest and repair and rejuvenate so that you can kickstart the following day with the same sort of intention that you started the first, then you're starting from a position of a negative traction anyway, aren't you?